Hello, lovelies. I did have some other stuff I was going to talk to you about today since I got my voice back, but instead we're going to talk about Goonergate, which is a silly name for a silly fuss. What it boils down to is that one armed camp likes sexy characters and thinks sexy characters are okay, and scantily clad characters and games that include fan service, that's fine, and the other group thinks that it isn't. Somehow the first group feels aggrieved that so many characters seem to be being deliberately designed to be unattractive, both in terms of personality and character design. And the other half thinks that despite so many high-profile failures, this is still the way to go all the time, every time, with every character. Now, a lot of this has blown up around the redesign of Ciri for The Witcher 4. Now, personally, I think that objection is silly. I said so on a T-Shirts show last week. I still think it's silly and stupid. She is older, the design isn't egregiously ugly or overweight or anything else, she just looks more mature, more grizzled. It makes perfect sense. But it's not really about Ciri, is it? It's about everything that came before Ciri, and now there is no trust left. There is no leeway left. There is no forgiveness left after so many years of this constant drip of unearned hyper competence female characters, of ugly character designs, done deliberately through misguided attempts at body positivity and all of this, and the constant demonization of men and of the kind of things that men like. So for a whole bunch of people, Ciri is just the last straw, but you can't look at Ciri to understand everything that's gone before. Ciri, I think, playing Ciri as a main character, that has been earned. You played her for some of The Witcher 3 and so on. Geralt's story appears to be largely done. It's understandable why it would be disappointing that you don't get to play The Witcher in a Witcher game, but I think Ciri is earned. But again, all that trust that people have has been eroded. People have been constantly demonized for liking certain things. Male sexuality has been demonized, and bi/lesbian sexuality as well. Come to that. It's not just men who are upset. A lot of women like to identify with sexy female characters. Part of the reason I really liked The Witcher 3 was because Geralt was treated as a sexually attractive character. Other characters, and not just the main two romance options, would flirt with him. And you had a sense of him as a sexually potent and attractive individual within the story and space of that game, and that was hugely appealing to me, and lots of women feel the same way about attractive female characters. But this trend has been going on for a long time, and so, as I say, for a lot of people this is the last straw. There have been these constant attacks on male sexuality, attacks on sexually appealing female characters, even those that have been designed and created by women, Bayonetta, for example, and it's just endless. And so eventually enough people, a critical mass of people, reach their breaking point, and often that is over something silly like Ciri. Now, comparisons have been being made with Gamergate. I also think that's silly overall, but I do think there are some useful lines of comparison that can be drawn here. See, Gamergate, there was a seething resentment beneath the surface going on for a very long time, and then there was an inciting incident and all of that exploded. Even though the inciting incident perhaps wasn't necessarily something big enough to justify that, but there was all this stuff going on before that people ignored to fixate upon the inciting incident. And the same thing has happened here. Back then it was more that games media, games reporting, entertainment reporting, was hostile to its own audience and treated them like shit and no longer served them. And now it's more that game companies have become hostile to their own audience, and the taste of their audience has become hectoring and lecturing in the same kind of way the games media was before. And you also have social critics and so on, commentators, the commentariat coming in on this as well. But this does demonstrate some things we always said about Gamergate, like how it was never a right-wing movement. Yeah, horseshoe theory is horribly simplistic, stupid, often doesn't apply, another thing that's silly. But when you have the likes of Matt Walsh on one side and similar figures on the so-called left, both attacking games out of some kind of moral puritanism, decrying them as porn, or decrying porn addiction because people like a bit of fan service in their games. Yeah, it's essentially the same criticism coming from polar opposites or on the political spectrum, right? But they're both making what amount to the same arguments. They're both arguing for a sort of moral puritanism. They're both making hay from the fact that some people like a bit of fan service, a bit of sexuality, you know? Just one side calls it degenerate and the other side calls it problematic. Same bullshit, different underlying politics. It's similar to how TERFs who come from the radical feminist far left, you know, they've found common ground with the far right because they both hate trans people. Or, well, the far right hates trans people, the radfems hate men, and they regard trans people as men, or at least, you know, people who transition in that particular direction, you know, that. But they found a common ground and a sense of grievance and a sense of victimhood. And in the same way, you've got these figures like Matt Walsh and the far left so-called figures also attacking fan service and pornification, as some people call it. But gamers have been pretty consistent in their fuck off. Whoever it is that wants to censor things, whoever it is that is wielding the censorship stick in any particular decade. So it just goes to show, you know, the right and the far right tried to use Gamergate to their own ends and largely failed, no matter what people tell you. But they were used in turn to get the message out, even though that turned out to not be a particularly good idea. But gamers as a whole continue to be primarily left lib, in that they want free expression, that they are mostly more sex positive, and so on. And so they stick up two fingers at whoever it is that is trying to censor the things that they love. And that is rather consistent, and it's not consistent with the idea that, you know, anyone with a games console is a fascist. Alright, the whole thing's silly, people are making the same kind of errors, but I can't help but feel a sense of vindication given the landscape of the controversy that I've just spelled out, you know? It's nice to know you're right, even when it makes no meaningful difference whatsoever. It's still nice. It does your heart good. Zang. I'm terrible at pimping my stuff, so I thought dressing like a pimp might make it a little bit easier. I have blogs where you can read stuff and see things and interact with me. My main one is postmortemstudios.wordpress.com. My writing one and sort of diary blog is over at talesofgrim.wordpress.com. Hope to see you there.